Righty, welcome everyone to episode 19 of the Seriously Social podcast. You have your podcast hosts here, Lorenzo Johnson and Kaushal from Socially In. And we have a special episode this morning. We have our first guest. I know we've promised it to you all for quite some time now. It was in the works, as we promised. But I'll let Lorenzo introduce us. But just a quick synopsis of really what we're trying to bring to you all here today is we are your go-to shop for social media insights, for social media tactics, for social media strategies. And today we actually have a pretty in-depth episode about some futuristic just things to be thinking about when it comes to marketing, to be thinking about in the social media space. So we're going to cover a lot of AI. We're going to cover a lot about data in general, first-party data specifically. We're going to talk a lot about the hybrid work models of this remote culture. 2024 is right around the corner. And we want to bring you all the latest insights that we've really learned throughout this entire calendar year, and as we head into 2024, what to be prepared for. And Lorenzo, I'll let you go ahead and kick us off.
So, man, without further ado, we are very, very excited to have Cicerone's own Andrew Eklund. He's become a friend of ours, a really good business associate of ours. Andrew is with and CEO and founder of a full-service digital marketing agency out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, called Cicerone. Andrew, we are so happy to have you today. I'll speak a little bit kind of about how we all connected after this, but man, we're so glad to have you. Thank you for taking time and joining us this morning.
Absolutely. It's great to see both of you. And yeah,
Likewise.
we missed each other recently at one of the meetings, but we've got all sorts of interesting stuff coming up next year. So it'll be great to be able to be together in person again soon.
It will. So as you guys all know, we're always trying to talk about increasing our thought leadership and really staying in the forefront of industries and trends. And one of the ways that both Socially In and Cicerone really do that is by we're a part of this group called the Transatlantic Agency Network. It's called TAN. It's a group of wonderful CEOs and business leaders of digital marketing agencies all across the world. And about 3 times a year, we try to get together and explore the exact same types of topics that we're talking right now. What's trending in the digital marketing and social media space, what's on the forefront, and not just the technical things as we're going to get into today, but what's the work from home life as an agency and as a startup potentially? What are all of those different things that affect not just the day-to-day operations of a business, but also the vision of a business, the long-term growth of where it's really headed. So over the past couple of years, it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you, Andrew. And I know you're going to be sharing some wonderful insights today. Kaushal, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's definitely go ahead and get started. So we got through the introductions, and as always, we've had a reoccurring theme for the last few episodes. I think it's going to be a reoccurring theme for quite some time now, but AI, oh my God. And before we get started into this, we're going to just talk about some practical use cases that agency owners, or even if you're in the marketing space in general, that you should adopt a little bit more advanced use cases. But I'll go ahead and start off by one point. That's something I actually noticed this morning. It may have happened for some users a few days ago, but if you are a ChatGPT Plus user, obviously you have those different modules or beta modules that you can utilize, whether it's browsing with Bing or data analytics or DALL-E 3 and being able to create images. Well, I just looked this morning, and I don't know, like I said, if it's been something that's happened for others quite yet, but they have a new version called Confidential that's combined all of those capabilities into one. So now you can let it browse information, give it prompts, give it inputs, then tell it, hey, you want to create an image all in one chat, and it'll be able to do it for you. Versus before, honestly, I used it today, you would have to do it in separate chats and it wouldn't be able to understand each other. So it was a little bit disconnected, but all in all, they're continuously making improvements, and it's honestly phenomenal what I'm being able to see with this. So let's start off with there. How can agencies, how can marketers, how can people who are wanting to grow their business start to utilize AI just very, very simply? Let's start there.
Sounds good. First of all, you may notice that I did not trim my big ass gray beard because I wanted to come off as having some sage advice. It's also just early in the morning. This is just one day's growth. Anyway,
I thought it was for No Shave November. I thought that's what we all were.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Maybe that is what I'm doing. All right. So yeah, I mean, AI is one of those fascinating things that's come on the scene. But to me, you know, having been, I'm almost in like year 30 right now in the digital space. I started the agency in 1995. And so one of the things that I've learned is that history repeats itself over and over again, specifically whenever there's a new technology. You know, what happens at very first with any new technology is that it's met with some intrepidation. And then people go in two camps. They go into total denialism, which is like, no, this stuff is never going to work. I'll come back to that. And then there are the people who embrace it and say it's the future, right? And then those two camps have to come together. But by the time the people who denied the technology come back to it, there's playing catch up. And this happens every time. I mean, granted, the internet was number one, right? I mean, like I spent the first 5 years of my career from 95 to 2000 convincing people that the internet was the thing. And not only that, but like when the .coms crashed, everyone was like, told you, going away, right? And I think they were wrong. But anyway, so
just a little bit.
Yeah. So
maybe, just maybe.
Yeah. I look at AI the same way. And so I think the thing that people really just get so short-sighted on is that everything that we're describing right now is a beta product. It's beta. ChatGPT is a beta product, right? Bard is a beta product. You know, all of these sorts of things. These are not meant to solve the world's problems yet. They're meant to tease out and show people what the possibilities are. So what I always say is like, what's the number one thing that people have to have right now? Two things: an open mind and curiosity. Maybe those are one thing, right? Like you have to be curious. You have to look at this. And so I'm going to wrap this up, not wrap it up, but I want to condense things really, really precisely. I've recently kind of come to my own realization that my competitors are no longer other digital agencies or digital consultancies or whatever. My competitor is AI. And as soon as I start thinking about AI as my chief competitor, I embrace it even more and more, right? Because I'm like, I need to know what this is, because if I don't have my head around this, if I can't incrementally put pieces of new practices in place, and really with the motivation of saying, I want to ace it, and I want to get rid of old processes, and I want to be better, I want to be smarter, I want to be faster. And in some cases, I do want to be cheaper, right? And why is that? Because AI doesn't necessarily replace people, but it certainly improves processes. And it improves the time between not knowing something and knowing something. And we spend a lot of time in our worlds in that 100%. Knowing. Right? That's what the world of analytics has been about forever, right? So this is not a new thing. I mean, we've always wanted to know, you know, as digital marketers in particular, we've always had access to huge amounts of data. The number one thing that clients complain about when it comes to data is we have so much of it and we don't know what to do with it.
What to do, yeah.
If you've ever asked that question, then you cannot go down the fork in the road that says, I'm going to deny AI. You simply cannot. So let's talk a little bit about some of the practical side of this. So I'm quite a bit different than you, right? You guys are sort of like are saddled between creative strategy, digital strategy, audience, and execution and social. And there's a ton of creative work that needs to be done in a compelling manner. And the fact of the matter is the volume of creative that needs to be created to put into the channels that you're managing is more than your clients are probably willing to pay. 100%. I'm just going to make an assumption, right?
That's a reality. It's not an assumption. The world's largest brands to this day suck at scaling organic content. I get it, it's expensive, but they really are not in tune with what are the pros and cons of, you know, being able to scale organic content on social.
Yeah. And what's interesting there is, you know, some agencies, maybe you guys have, I don't know, think we've talked about it, but like some agencies have set up full content studios, right? I mean, it's just always ready to go, ready to shoot, ready to edit, ready to go. And I'm sorry, but like you look at what Dolly is doing, you look at what Midjourney is doing as beta products, right? And you start to see that this really is a content studio.
Yeah.
It's a virtual 100%. Content studio. And what does that do? What does that do to people who have content studios? So there's going to be a giant argument in the space, and it's always the same argument. The people who own content studios will say, but it's never going to be as good as what we can create. They will say that every single time. And the reason is because they've made a significant investment.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily because it's true or not. It's because they need to protect the investment that they made. And I understand that. Believe me, I had to jettison stuff. I had a full hosting facility. I used to go down in the vault of a bank in the basement of a skyscraper in downtown Minneapolis, and I would go and I would look at the blinking lights. I would call them the managers and I would say, can I come down and look at the blinking lights? You know, because I thought it was cool, right? We had like all these blade servers set up and all this kind of stuff, you know.
Interesting.
AWS comes out, cloud services come out. I need no more blinking lights, right? And so it's like, okay, if you don't pivot, you're dead. So back to the AI conversation a little bit. So that's your creative side of it, right? So you guys now have these virtual creative studios. I'm quite a bit more, I think, on the data side of it, right? So I'm looking at AI from the ability to process huge amounts of data, distill it, right? Distill it down into the information that I need.
Right.
And one of the areas that I've been working on, and I'm like not just working on having fun, but like we're in operations with, is helping clients distill through all of that unstructured data that they might be sitting on, like sales organizations. Sales organizations will take hundreds of calls per week. They're now recording those calls. It's ending up in Salesforce, sometimes as notes. Like they're literally taking notes, because even recording like we are today, that's a relatively new thing, you know?
Yeah.
Think about that. It's kind of crazy. But like, you know, recording it just to go back to see what happens. Well, now with, you know, I mean, like Zoom's got its AI assistants now, and all Google Meet's got it all. And so, you know, what we're doing is we're taking all that unstructured data, that conversational data between two people, two humans that are talking. The client, the prospect is pushing back. The salesperson's like making an adjustment in the approach that they might want to take. And that's being replicated across every sales team. I'm taking all that unstructured data, the conversational data, the notes, and prompt engineering its way through, you know, a variety of different AIs. But, you know, just to say, okay, here's what's actually being said. These conversations seem to rise up all the time, and it seems like the answers that we're giving as a sales organization doesn't seem to be resonate, because they keep answering the same questions. Oh, by the way, the website's still talking about it like it was 2010, right? Versus what people are asking about now. And so all of that intelligence comes together and starts to inform a content strategy, starts to inform a sales team about how to improve the conversations. And then most important for us, it allows us to distill these conversations into audience groupings, into new audience segments. And we'll get into that in a second, but that's part of our audience design process. But that to me is really where the magic is starting to happen. You guys have it from a production standpoint, you know, perhaps. I have it from being able to distill huge amounts of data, and data that's oftentimes very difficult to work with because it's unstructured.
That's actually, you know, a very unique point you make there, Andrew, because I think a lot of businesses have that problem of actually having all of this data available, but not knowing how to utilize it or understand it. And it happens, you know, very, very frequently. So I think even one topic that maybe we can dive deeper into here on the conversation is like, how would someone go about structuring the data and hoping it makes sense for GPT? And you know, me personally, I do use it a lot for data analysis as well, more than the creative aspects of it, because me personally, I'm not that creative of a person in general anyway. So me, yes, it does facilitate me to be more creative, but I'm all about the analytics and data. So I have some models primed where when I had to create a brand new strategy for an entire new organization that was being developed out of a Fortune 500 company, I was able to give it all the context, and it helped me verbatim, section by section, create the strategy that I wanted to create for them, whether it was the messaging, whether it was understanding the brand, whether it was the content pillars, whether it was understanding what goals and KPIs it needed to achieve, all of those things, and, you know, help primed it. So yes, I agree that what information you give it, is starting to become very, very important, and treating it almost like you're having a conversation with somebody as if you were trying to educate them is a good practice with GPT. And I like going back to Andrew's point about it being a beta, this is the crappiest version that you will ever play around with. Each day, yes, it does improve, but think about it. You're playing with the crappiest version, a beta, a Model 1, something that isn't even really fully out there yet.
And we're not talking about like the first beta being like a Model T car.
Yeah.
Right? Like the first beta version of some of these software is like Tesla's first Roadster.
I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and what's going to happen after that? Like, you know, when Tesla started, they made the most expensive car that was only for the richest people who want to buy the most expensive car. They funded everything else, right? That they funded the Model 3 that I drive now, the cheap one.
Same.
And that's what we're talking about, right? But it's not like it's not like Sam Altman invented the Model T. They invented the Tesla Roadster. So anyways, you know, I think that so how do we do that? Well, you had just mentioned, you know, how some of the, you know, you woke up this morning and realized that ChatGPT had done some things overnight and that was really interesting. Well, now also it and others can process PDF files.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
I did see you can upload images and things and they'll understand it, but a PDF is not something I've tried yet. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And spreadsheets.
Yeah. So we've started to do that. So earlier this year, we went through the process of going through our minority and diversification certification, our SAM.gov certification, so that we can start to be eligible to go after government contracts officially. Throughout that process, for anybody who's filled out an RFP or went through a government RFP process, there's just so much information to comb through. You're talking about 50 pages, all these different things and stuff like that. And so one of the most laborious parts of that process is the intake of, we get this opportunity that on the surface, the title looks like it's good, but then you got to go through the weeds, figure out all of these details. We were so excited when they updated that to upload a PDF, because now, y'all, when we talk about, and this goes kind of to some of the points you mentioned, Andrew, efficiency is what this is just completely changing the game up. I can now take that PDF and literally say, analyze this and break this down into the basic things of what we need to understand. What is the scope of work that needs to be delivered? What's the budget? What's the blah, 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 blah. So we actually went through and created a template now where every time we get a new RFP, we just basically upload it. We provide the template, say, hey, analyze it for these assets. Y'all, 5 minutes later, we have the entire breakdown of all of that. Boom. What used to take now our RFP coordinator 30 minutes, every single one that was coming in just to process it. Now we're literally doing that type of stuff in just like 5 minutes right now. So it's really exciting. And then the other thing I was going to say is that it's crazy how AI is doing ideally what we used to want Google to do. It's that extra level of research. So, you know, I'll give a personal example and a work example. We got an RFP yesterday that had a weird line item about basically it told us that the budget was going to be like 226,000 or something, but due to some technical federal law, 25% of that, and then it had a bunch of legalese jargon. And I was like, I kind of think that this is saying that like we need to basically front or give added value of like 25% of this in order to bid for it. I got ready to go to Google. I try to, you know, I copy it. I throw it into Google. I'm asking all of these things of like, please, someone. It's taking me to every legal site possible, all the technical answers, the full article. And I'm like, what am I doing? I could just go to ChatGPT for something like this. I go to ChatGPT. I say, literally, and it's also funny, you guys made a comment about talking to it like a person. My assistant looks at my ChatGPT and she's like, you talk to it like a person. She's like, you say please, can you? I'm like, yeah, I treat it and talk to it just like
You're nicer to ChatGPT than you are to humans, Lorenzo.
I am so nice to ChatGPT, y'all. Like, I'm like the nicest thing. I'm like, thank you so much. That worked out awesome. I appreciate you. And so, I literally put it in and I said, do you understand how RFP processes work through SAM.gov? It's like, yep, here's like the breakdown of blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great. I got this section. Break this down into simple terms for me. And it's like, great. This means that exactly what we kind of thought. But in 30 seconds, 2 prompts, I was able to get what research. I had to go through all these pages. I went through 10 minutes and I'm still like, I am no further to understanding. So it's just so efficient. And again, like I said, it really operates how you wish Google would do. And then I'll give you another personal, because me and Kaushal talk about this all the time. I use ChatGPT personally and AI, not even just ChatGPT. I just edited my full wedding video, broke it down into small clips using some AI. I was trying to plan our honeymoon and some different things like that. And
Whole vacation, yep.
Bro, it was so, I'm like having to go to all these different hotels, check prices. Y'all, I literally told ChatGPT what I wanted, and literally using the web browser function, I was like, based upon these hotels, I need you to give me the rates. I also need you to scan to see when I can get the cheapest flight, and send me the links to the airlines that you've looked at, just in case I want to book everything directly. Go. It gave me every single thing that I needed right there at my fingertips, as opposed to me having to go to Expedia and go to blah, 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 check out all of these different hotels and things. And so it's the efficiency that it operates at. And then it's having all of these things at your fingertips. And like I said, it's doing what I always hoped and wished that Google would do. But Google never takes that extra step for you, This takes that extra step for you. So it's like, why would you not lean into this, y'all?
With
so
it,
I think
how it's designed. Go ahead.
I was just say, I'm glad we're recording this today, and I'm glad it's going to be on the internet forever, because in 5 years we're going to look back on this conversation. It's going to seem so pedestrian and so funny. Like,
Andrew,
you know what I mean?
It's going to come down to the point where I'm going to be able to tell ChatGPT, because it's going to have my debit card, my credit card, and everything already in there. I'm going to say, also go ahead and book that flight for me.
Yeah.
Well, you know what else it's going to do? It's going. Yeah, it does, exactly. What it's going to do, Lorenzo, is you're going to be like, hey, I want to go to Middle East, Asia on a trip for 2 weeks at this time of the year. What is the typical weather like? Here's a picture of my closet. Pick my outfits out for me, and it will do a day by day, pick your outfits out for you based on the recommended weather. It's insane. Like, it's literally, I think about it almost like a biological arm, where it's like a little bit of a robot, right? It's like it enhances a human, not necessarily takes away from them. And that's why, going back to Andrew's point about being really open, being curious, being able to play around with it, it's going to become almost like your best friend. But in order for it to be your best friend, you have to invest time, you have to educate yourself, you have to give it the love and care. Going back to you saying please and thank you, right? You have to really help it be a facilitator for you, and you can only do that if you're going to be the type of person who's optimistic about the potential of AI.
So I want to pick up on that a little bit, in the sense that I think it's really interesting that we're talking about how we talk to it, and I believe as well that these are chatbots, right? They're chatbot assistants, and we need to think about chat. I think it's really funny that we call it chat, but it is. And we think of it as literally just an assistant that just takes care of so many different things. And the way I've been talking about it, and you know, this sort of actually starts to get a little bit into the work from home, new hybrid, all kinds of things. But like, through the pandemic, let's just be honest, none of us were working at 100%.
Yeah, we
weren't. Some days we're 20%.
I was focused on the stock market.
Yeah, right. We're looking at it. We're not spending time working. We're looking at our crypto holdings.
Exactly.
But Kaushal every morning before the day.
yeah, exactly. Hey, life is better right now.
It is indeed, yes.
But the reason that we talk to it the way we talk to it is that there's quid pro quo, meaning the nicer I am to you, chatbot, the nicer you're going to be in return. And if I tell you to go fuck off, you know, you're smart enough to tell me, yeah, actually, you're going to be super nice to me. You're going to be like, hey, whoa, man, what did I do to you? Like, you know what I mean? And so, you know, I think we actually speak to it better than humans, because what we get in return is plussed up. But anyways, let me get back to this point about hybrid stuff. We were not operating at 100%. We're now, you know, in a hybrid work environments where the at-home part of it is still outpacing the at-office side of it. And I'm not here to argue the philosophical pros and cons of that. What I will say is that I would love to be able to get 100% out of everybody, but I would love to get 100% or 150% out of everybody, because they're using these tools, not because I want them to put in 60, 80 hours. I want them to work 40 hours of, you know, or be on the clock for 40 hours, the classic thing,
Mm-hmm.
using these
Maximize
tools,
it.
and I'm getting a 1.25x, I'm getting a 1.5x out of everybody. So I look at it purely from a productivity standpoint, whereas that every 2.5s is another full-time employee I would have to hire. And now I look at it and say, okay, well, what are the measurements in my business? If I can start to maximize the potential of everybody else, and frankly, let's be honest, the amount of work that we have people doing that is below their pay grade is amazing, because there's a lot of busy work that's required just to get the smart work done. If I can apply AI to process the busy work and free up 100% of my smart people's time to invest smart things, I just became an exponentially better agency. So when I look at, should I be afraid of it, right? If I look at it and say, oh my God, ChatGPT is going to replace our media planning business, which it could, I want to figure out how to put myself out of business as fast as humanly possible. And then reapply that time towards thinking about things, maybe cultural research, maybe whatever, original ideas. So I think that's the way to look at it now. It's like, and when I say I look at AI as my competitor, because if I don't do that, one of my competitors will do that. And so I am competing against that competitor. I'm just competing against that competitor that applied AI in a smarter fashion faster. So I want to be that person. And that's what my brand is, right? I mean, the name Cicerone means a trusted guide for people on complex journeys, right? So like that's what we do.
Well, Andrew, we've said this, Kaushal, I don't know how many times in our podcast so far. It's AI won't replace you. The business or the person effectively using AI will absolutely replace you. People just have this fear. Well, that's what they keep saying. AI is my replacement. AI is my replacement. No, AI itself is not. But again, the company that leans into it as your competitor, that's going to be the person that replaces you. That individual, that copywriter, that designer, that operations person, like we're talking about, that understands how to use it to minimize all of those other things and really maximize the other stuff. That's the person that absolutely will replace you in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's right. And not only will it replace you, but there just won't be a need for it.
Well, it's getting harder to the comment you made earlier, Andrew, I think it's a really good one for this. And you said a lot of creative agencies and different people say, well, they can't do, why still me? Well, it's not human. They can't do what we can do and things like that. And the issue is becoming further and further away from the truth.
Yeah,
we are getting
I have real mixed feelings about it, right? I have real mixed feelings about it. I mean, I believe that with the excess time that we may find ourselves having, maybe as professionals or whatever, I want us to be able to invest that time into more creative pursuits, more loving pursuits, more peaceful pursuits as human beings with this extra time. And if we end up automating and we end up having, and I mean this quite literally, functional robots doing a lot of menial labor, I mean, there's a lot of people that need to be taken care of that will be displaced, that maybe don't have the access or capabilities of onboarding these tools, or even the natural inclination to want to become something other than that. And so what I have a problem with a little bit, and I haven't figured out my stance on it, is that if AI starts creating better art and better music than what humans can make, I have a problem with that a little bit, right? Like that's where it starts to become personal. And now all of this is personal. Like, don't get me wrong. Somebody's job getting replaced by a robot is not a kind thing that happens to you in your life.
At all.
Right?
For sure.
And if you don't have an employer that's going to retrain you for a new job, and maybe even identify what that new job is. I mean, maybe you're a robot operator. I don't know. I mean, but like we haven't thought about this societally yet. And again, because it's beta and because everyone's just sort of inventing things. I mean, I could see whereby, we start to have certification that says that this product was 85% made by robots and AI. And you as a consumer may have a choice to say, it's like we do with a nutrition label. And we might go to a humanist approach, where there's a consumer out there in the world that says, I only want to buy products that were 20% made by robots because I believe humans. I think we're like really early on, like having to have a nutrition label, the work that we do, because, or are we going to have to move to universal basic income? So every person who's born can be born at a level where they can at least survive and feed themselves and have a roof over their head, and like, is that socialism? I don't know. But like, if you don't do something, you're going to displace billions and billions and billions of people in this world. We have 8 billion people, half of whom live in poverty. And now we're adding a new layer of technology on top of the other billions. So eventually, what do we do with all of this time? And I think that this is and still have to feed our mouths, and shelter ourselves. I mean, it's so philosophical; it's beyond.
Well,
it's an interesting point.
There are people thinking about it.
Well, you're not too far. You mentioned that's where that could be down the years. It's closer than we may think. Me and Kaushal talked about this in our last podcast. I don't know if you've seen, Andrew. Twitter now is actually testing having a label on content that was created with AI. So now, before you engage in that content, you get a notification that says this content was created with AI right at the bottom. So I think that notification, that labeling, is actually going to be a little bit sooner than what we may be thinking. And then I think one other thing, just to stay on the mindset of the average person on a day-to-day basis who is really struggling with adopting this, but is also at the highest risk of being replaced essentially by it, it's almost that mindset of, it's not us as agency owners trying to convince people that it's useful. I think it's trying to get people over the hump that you are not training your replacement. Yeah. And I think that's the hump right now of, so again, I'll take a step back and I say, if I was a copywriter or a designer, let's just use that. That's a simple example. And my boss said, I need you to be using ChatGPT to increase your efficiency and things like that for it. I can see the 100% back of my head thinking, what happens if this gets too good? What happens if I'm maximizing my output so much to the point where my salary is $55,000 to copyright? Can I do this so well that then my managers come back and say, why are we paying Lorenzo $55,000 when he's just using this? Can we train somebody else not to be a good copywriter, but can we train somebody else how to get the best copy out of the system, which is not the same skill set? So I think that's the hump that's really hard to get over, because that is a hard thing. Because again, people also aren't ignorant to that's how business decisions are made. When you take a step back, close your eyes, take away the personality, and you look at the books and you just say, I could maybe find somebody to input these things for 25 hours a week, or 25 hours a week, as opposed to a full-time person in salary. It's not that easy as a business decision to just say absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the biggest things, what we're talking about, that's hard, that line between getting your employees to adapt to the mentality, but then also saying that as you get the data and the research, how do you optimize your business? It puts a very interesting, like we mentioned, philosophical clash, because there may become a philosophical answer that business owners have to say. And it's that, do I want to lean in so heavily into that AI, or am I willing to invest in the people? Because what is, to your point, Andrew, what's that trickle down effect? If every business start to do this and start to think that way, what then does happen?
Yeah.
That's a real scare and a real worry. And unfortunately, in America, it's a very real possibility.
Yeah. So and I want to make a comment on that. And I'm not sure. I think I kind of hate myself for saying it too. If there's a river running through America, it's greed. And the boat on the river that brings us down the river is capitalism. And it won't be the copywriter who decides to use ChatGPT. It'll be an executive someplace who makes the decision that the copywriter has to use ChatGPT.
Yep.
And now that copywriter is, and by the way, if you're a copywriter at an agency in New York City, it's not $55,000, it's $155,000.
Yeah.
And you as a business leader who are responding to shareholders, who are watching your competitors, who are reading Harvard Business Review, who are reading Wall Street Journal about these success stories of these lean, mean, fighting machine companies that are built on the backs of new technology, and how their margins have gone from 15% to 50%.
Right.
That's on that boat going down the river. And the question, we are going to have a reckoning at some point, and we're going to have a reckoning about this at some point. The question is, when is the reckoning?
Yep.
Is it when it's too late and we literally have revolt? Or is it something we think about now and we have a conversation about it? And, you know, I know that we're living in a time where we're sort of anti-government and this, that, and the other thing. I think we're just anti-bullshit, and I think everyone's exhausted.
Yeah.
We'd like to have our leaders on both sides of everybody else to realize that we have real problems in this world that need to be solved. And sometimes it's not always, you know, black and white or right or left. And so I've always said the big revolution in America will be when the moderates actually are in charge. But we'll see. But like, these are the real conversations. And Lorenzo, I appreciate everything you're saying, because it's just like, I think that we don't know what's quite happening yet. And this is why, whether you like him or not, the Elon Musks of the world, you know, in London yesterday, there was a big conference on AI, and basically just, you know, bringing a bunch of the people you would expect together to kind of just say, like, what's the plan here, you know, and are we going to have some standards? Are we going to have all these sort of things? Because this is beyond Wild West. I mean, the internet did not have exponential computing power behind it. I mean, it had, literally, when I started my agency, we were designing first generation websites for fastest throughput of 14.4K modems. Okay.
Wow.
You didn't have images on websites because it would take too long to load.
Right.
We're having those conversations right now today. The three of us, we're having should there be images on websites conversation, and now we're streaming 4K. Okay. So AI is starting at a baseline of streaming 4K, and NVIDIA chips and Tesla's Dojo chips, if they decide that that's going to be a new AI chip that powers all robotics in the world, right? And so, you know, there's a chip race right now, but we're not talking about like second generation Intel chips for your laptops. We're talking about whether or not this runs a fully almost sentient robot. So, you know, it's like, it's insane, the speed. So then you talk about how soon is it going to happen? Exponentially soon.
Moore's law, right? Twice as fast.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I love it. We had a plan for an hour-long conversation about like 10 different topics, and we can't get off this one, which is great.
That's oftentimes how
there's just so much. And, you know, the one thing I've told people, because I understand it can be, you know, we're human beings. There's a lot of things that we tell ourselves sometimes that shy us away from, you know, being open-minded or being uncomfortable. I guess that's the better word. And AI makes people uncomfortable. But I try to tell people, very simple analogy, very easily, the same way people used to ride horses and then Ford came around. The same way that most people back in the 1850s to 1900, 70% of the world worked on the farm. Now you have tractors. The same way everybody used to go to the libraries to do research before Google came, and then everybody was like, I cannot do research without Google. The same way AI will be, I cannot even use Google anymore. I have to use AI to get my information. And so I'm just telling people, just think about it that way, embrace it, be open-minded, and you have a less of a chance being replaced than those that won't. But I won't say you won't be so fully replaced, because AI is a scary beast. And I've been with AI for a long time. When they started playing the Go game back in, like, when DeepMind, and they played that Go game back in the early 2014, maybe, I believe. And I was just like, we're on a race to something phenomenal, and it's going to be scary good when it starts to be able to do things that right now most human beings don't believe it can. So
I'll say two real small things, one funny and then one, I can't think of the name. I was going to try to Google it real fast, but I still remember when I got my first encyclopedia set
Yeah.
growing up. Like
Yeah.
that's, and I was showing my age a little bit. Like I still remember when we got it and it was like you had to have it in the house to just conduct basic type of work and things. You just needed the Britannica encyclopedia thing in your house just to do your homework and things. But last thing I'll say, because I think you said one last good point, because we spent a lot of our time talking about lower level employees and kind of where they're at risk. Did you guys see, and if I can maybe find it really quick, did you guys see the company that's testing that moved their CEO to be completely automated and using AI?
I had not seen that actually. Wow.
Ran a whole test, fired their CEO. And basically the question was, can AI operate like a CEO more efficiently? And again, between salaries, all these different things, but decision making, increase in stocks, increase in everything right now. Interestingly enough, the AI CEO is outperforming, and this the data is outperforming before. So this is a serious issue that will affect everybody across the board. This isn't just lower level employees and things like that. It'll go all the way up to the top.
Yeah, I think you just described the world's greatest life hack. I'm literally thinking like, well, it's Friday morning. Like, can I fire myself by this morning, but still pay myself a salary? Because I'm not going to pay AI for the salary. And if it does a better job than I do, and believe me, coming out of this pandemic, I'm not totally positive that I'm a great one. Right?
Like, I think we all have that. When we look in the mirror, we're like, yeah, no, not that guy.
Not that guy. Yeah, right, exactly.
No, but I agree. You made a really interesting point, Andrew. It's you can literally start. I just thought about it. I was like, why wouldn't I just own a bunch of companies that AI operates from top to bottom? It makes the decisions, it employs the people, it does everything. All I needed to do is operate the company better than I would.
So it's called Dictador. It's a 100-year global company out of Colombia. If you guys want to check it out. First time, they created her in like 2015 and some different things, and I've been using all of this tech and everything to just continue to enhance her. But they like pride themselves on being like the one of the most globally forward companies and different things. So I'm very interested to kind of see how this case study is going to do, because that gets interesting. But it's this goes into kind of some of the things we were kind of talking about as trends and things, and a little bit into agency life decisions. It's going to be interesting how much empathy you can put into AI. And I think that's going to be not the last, but one of the last elements that humans will always be able to own. That's just going to be very hard to truly get an AI to really operate. And you'll be able to get it to teach its skill sets and processing, and it'll get next level of that. But I think it's the empathy factor. I think that's what makes, you can argue, a good CEO. I could also argue that's what makes a very crass or frank type of person. When we've had to make some decisions lately, when you're talking about your employees and staff, and they become hard because from the numbers perspective, some things become, we'll just look at the numbers. It's a no-brainer type of thing. But that's easy to say when you're looking at X's and O's and people as A's and B's and no names to it. It's a lot different when you actually have to grab that said employee. Like Kaushal was mentioning earlier in the podcast, we had a long-time employee where we had to go through some of those things. And it's such a hard decision to make, because again, we are empathetic people. We are people. There is that human element to it and all of those things. So of course you try to do everything that you can, but in that situation, from a numbers perspective, because of some things that we have going on, AI would say it's a black and white answer. There's nothing to even kind of sort of consider here. Business, it does not make sense. And I think, like I said, I would argue that's empathy is what makes a good CEO. The ability to say, yes, this is what the numbers say, but that's not all we can do when we make decisions. Numbers aren't the only guiding factor. And so, unfortunately, in this world, like you, in the analogy you mentioned, Andrew, in this world of this river of greed and capitalism, the black and white numbers are going to be what make people inherently more profitable. It is going to be, how can you get more for less?
Yeah.
It's just going to be that simple. And that's going to be that's going to be one of the driving forces behind it. So I think that's just an interesting thing for us to continue to watch. But like I said, the empathy is the one thing that I think will always be able to separate the human element from things. And I think the empathy is a very important thing, in my opinion. But again, I know there's
Absolutely.
arguments against that.
No, well, there should never be an argument against empathy, as far as I'm concerned. We inhabit this planet for now. We're essentially in control of it. I mean, I'm sure bacteria might have a different idea about that, but in viruses, but you know, we're fundamentally human, and we're on this planet for a very, very short time as human beings, right? And there doesn't seem to be, and we really do as a species operate almost like fight or die, right? I mean, like that is basically
very much so,
right? That's how we operate. It's survival every day, and a very, 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 very small number of people are able to do that entire lifetime in the lap of luxury. The vast majority of the human species does not. And I think that we have to look at empathy from the standpoint, I don't think we've ever really been able to figure out how to operationalize empathy. And that's a human trait. And I don't know if it's the number one value at Cicerone, just so you know. Have empathy is our number one value. And I will tell you also that empathy is not always efficient.
Facts.
I'm not good at letting people go. It's something that I have a very different, I believe in people. I'm ride or die. Right.
Same.
I believe in people for a long, long time. I try and offer as many ways out of the situation, not because I'm scared of letting somebody go. Believe me, I hate to say it, after 28 years, it's probably in the hundreds or whatever it is now. But I've tried to do each and every one of them with empathy. I've tried to do each and every one of them in a way that like an X and O or a 1 and a 2 on a spreadsheet isn't going to help that person that you let go find a new job.
Not at all.
Right? Now, AI could. There's no reason why it couldn't, right? There's no reason why an AI, and look, we're not going to let a robot fire a human.
Right.
We're not going to let it happen. That's an ethical violation on a human standard that I just don't think that we're going to get there. However, if an AI assisted us and said, okay, the X's and O's are saying that this person's no longer a good fit. This is just the business speaking. However, because the AI is trained on your HR system, right? We know this, maybe they've been through Strength Finders, maybe they've done some Myers-Briggs or some other newfangled sort of skills assessment. It also is combing all of Indeed, it's combing all of LinkedIn and everything else, and is saying, okay, you're going to have to let somebody go on Tuesday. I can see it on your calendar. These are 6 different companies that would be perfect for this person. And there are 3 jobs that are currently open. How about walking into the meeting, plussing yourself up that way? Right. Rather than that meeting being a negative 100 because you all walk out of there feeling like shit, right? If you have empathy, versus walking into that meeting and saying, I'm sorry, I think it looks like our time is probably coming to a close here, but I feel like, and whatever, and you have to say what you have to say, and lawyers will probably restrict you and whatever you can say. But here it looks like these are 3 openings right now. And oh, by the way, here's empathy. I know somebody who's on that team over at that company with that opening. I will make a phone call, right? I will send an email and try and see if I can get you an interview in there. That's AI. That's AI with empathy. And so I think that's, could be also where we're heading in so many different things, because all that is a database.
Right.
Yeah.
A database of skills over here and a skills matching over here. That's it. But you're not going to do it, I hate to say it, you're not going to spend it as the person who has to let that person go. You are not going to spend the time to comb Indeed to try and see if you can tee up their new job.
Yeah. And we have a culture committee, and I was actually just talking to one of our managers the other day, and we are trying to figure out processes into starting something like that here at Socially In. And one of the things she was telling me about is that they're floating an idea in the committee about resume strengthening afterwards and doing some of the same things you're talking about. How can we actually help them proactively, whether it's a job listing and things, and we weren't quite to the point of, let's also see if we have contacts there that we can make a phone call and things, but we are trying to figure out a process of how do we help people navigate what those next steps look like, because again, it's to your point, empathy is one of our 4 core values also, and it's a really, or 5, and it's a really big deal here too. So we are like, this sucks, this is hard, how can we do this the most empathetic way as possible, and helping guide through the next step is going to be that, especially because, as we know, and this is what makes some of these decisions so hard, depending on the timing, people aren't hiring.
Yeah,
that's just the reality of the situation. We all own agencies and things like that.
Everyone's working.
It is what it is.
Yes.
And so it's like understanding when you put somebody, that's going to be the hardest thing. It's the uncertainty, the instability. It's the ability for someone, to feed their family and things like that. That's always going to be hard to do. So that's one of the most empathetic things you can do, is how do I help you get back on your feet ASAP?
100%.
And like I said, we do the, give us a call, let us know, we do positive phone calls and all of those different things when it's proactive, when it's reactive. We're trying to get a little bit more proactive in that here at our agency. Because it's always it's a shitty process. Yeah. It's just that simple.
It's just another way that AI is able to amplify, right? Even to this day, when, if a brand or somebody that's working with us starts to take things in-house, and because of them doing that loss of business, we're having to let people go. Keith and I's immediate thought, Lorenzo's, all of the leaderships here really is there an opportunity for this person to be placed where they're taking the resources internally? Because why not take care of the person that's been doing it up to this point and has a very good understanding of, what's been working, what hasn't. So I love what Andrew mentioned about AI. That's actually a very unique point that I think a lot of business owners should be thinking about, is how do you take care of your people better with AI? So I think maybe that's even a topic we can focus on in the future, Lorenzo. But I love that specific point of like, how does it empower leaders to do right by their people even better? And so I think that's a very applicable use case.
That's a good point. Also, I forgot about that. That's a really good thing. I was very excited when we started doing that, because again, you've paid us all this time and money for our people, to learn so much about your brand over the years. There's no better person, if you're going to take it in-house, to continue to do all that before you have to retrain. And so I love the fact that we're starting to do that when we have a client of that size and that's been with us for a while. Awesome. Great to hear. Here's a couple of our employees that, unfortunately, as a result of this, are no longer going to be with us, though. But if you're open to having them and allowing them to interview and do the exact same thing they were doing, it's also a cost efficient for you as a business. So I do like that we're starting to do that. That's a good use case and idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. I know
gentlemen, we're ready to switch topic.
Yeah, we got the whole hour on AI.
We're only going to get one more topic. I can already tell you, we're only going to get one more topic, most likely, fellas. Where we, which one do we want to focus on? I know we had multiple different things.
I know Andrew really wanted to focus on audience design. We can talk about social media trends. We can talk about work from home life and this whole hybrid culture. But I think tying into the AI conversation we just had and digging into that audience design, specifically how AI ties into it as well, I think that'd be a good segue for us.
Let's do it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because we're trying to find, we've got a couple of different things converging in the marketplace right now. One is that the way that we've targeted people, which, by the way, also sounds kind of militaristic, doesn't it?
The way we target
another way of saying targeting, which is how do we deliver value to people based upon their interests?
Yes.
Also known as targeting. But we've got a bunch of things happening over the next year. I don't want to, I'm not a Wall Street analyst, but there's a high probability that we still are going to have some recessionary sorts of things happening in the economy. And as marketers, we know what that means. It means that our budgets are only as good as they are that month. At any point, something could get cut or whatever else. And so we've got economic pressures for sure. Now, granted, there's a lot of brands out there who during tougher times love to lean in because prices are suppressed on media, and not as many participants, it's scarcity, all these kind of good things. And, if you can find those clients, that's great. But I think there's going to be some pricing pressures. I think there's technology pressures because at some point, I do believe that cookies will go away and will not allow us the level of ease by which we can do targeting. So there, and then we have AI. So the way that we've been looking at this is that this is a struggle that we've been fighting now for several years in preparation for cookies. But now the fact that AI has come along, we've made a fairly significant pivot here. And what we're trying to say is the answer to all of that is what we're calling audience design. And what audience design is to take all of the first party data that exists within a company. I don't care if it's sales related or not. Just take all customer data, no matter what, organize it in a way that can be then that AI can train. You can train AI on it. By the way, this is something we didn't talk about today, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but like, to me, that's going to be 2024. 2023 was these large language models that were public models that were by a very relatively small number of companies.
Yeah.
All of these are, or many of these are launching these LLMs into the marketplace to say, do with it whatever you want, right? Like, and so I think that the idea that we're going to get super hyper vertical in being able to apply AI. So what I want to do, and what we're doing now currently, is taking all of that data from clients, the first party data on customer, applying large language models to it to train to understand what that is. And then to say, categorize all of these people for me into different segments, right? And also layer in financial performance into that. So I know what my highest performing segments are. I know what my mid-tier segments are that can be pushed into the higher ones. And then I know what my low yield ones are. And I can finally contextualize those. And then what you do is you take all of that information. By the way, I just simplified in like 3 sentences, a complicated process, right?
Yes.
You take all of that and then you take them out into the marketplace and model audience data against these segments. And essentially what you're doing is you're prioritizing your marketing investment against the most highest yielding people. And what is a highest yielding person to me is a person who has a propensity to want to know about your product or service that you didn't know wanted to know about your product or service. It's they themselves are modeled after people that you've already proven to be the people that give you high customer lifetime value, or however you want to measure performance. So what this does when you go through our audience design process is what ends up in market is highly surgical marketing and media dollars. So essentially what we're doing is we're reducing media waste. And when you reduce media waste, it's good for 2 people. Obviously, it's good for the marketer because you're only spending the money that you should. And so if you're already having financial pressures because of recessionary concerns, you can go to your CFO and say, we're good, right? Like, we're applying financial models and performance models
highest yield,
exponentially better than what we've ever done before. But and talk about empathy, it's also better for the consumer because I'm no longer wasting media impressions against consumers who will never buy and who are no longer cluttering up their screens, their spam, everything else with messaging that they would never respond to. And so to me, I just put a LinkedIn video out about it this week. This is like, to me, this is an ethical and moral question. Like, we as marketers are, and this is when mass media dies, right? I've been waiting for mass media to die for 28 years because, now all these devices are connected anyways. So the fact that last night was Thursday Night Football, I really only still want to give my product not to everybody who watches Thursday Night Football. I want it to send it to only to the people who are going to buy my client's product who watch Thursday Night Football. And Thursday Night Football is an Amazon Prime customer, so that there's a little data behind the scene going on. Right? So that, to me, that's what audience design is. And to me, right time, right place for those 3 factors all coming at it at one point. And I can tell you right now, it's the right message for the right time. And I think it's never going away because I don't think that marketers have any room for waste. But if you can go to those boardrooms, if you can go to that CFO and show the methodology of how that you are talking about an investment. And let me just make one last point about that. The S&P 500, there's only about 6 6, 7, 8 stocks that make up the vast majority of returns for the S&P 500. Right. So when you buy an index fund, you're an S&P index fund, you're buying 93 companies that aren't performing. Right. Wouldn't you rather just buy the 7 that are actually giving the returns, right? These are the alpha stocks, right? I think of people as alphas. I think as human beings as being incredibly valuable, and that their time is incredibly valuable. Why is that? Because of what I said earlier. We're on this planet for a very, very short amount of time if you look at it in the macro. And I want people to, I don't want to ever be the person who wastes people's time, because time is the most valuable thing that we own. Yep. And as I get older, I realize that more and more, you know? Yep. And so I believe that there's an ethical and moral code that can drive the adoption of technology to do this right. And I'm not trying to fight some sort of religious battle here. I'm not. I'm just saying that there's a right way and a wrong way, and I happen to believe this is the right way, and it's good for everybody.
No, that's a good. It's interesting that one of the points that you mentioned, Kaushal and I just talked about in a couple podcasts ago, and we talked about it in depth. And it's in social, we're seeing one of those exact same trends, and it's the focus of a micro audience. You know, we just had a whole conversation. We talked about the value in a niche. Yeah. And how more and more and more and more, and getting into 2024, it's only going to continue to head in that direction, is the true value of a niche, and understanding your niche, and understanding and speaking to that niche, and being comfortable doubling down in that niche, and being fine with the fact that even if my niche is 0.1% of the total of all of that, how there's actual money to be made, there's scalability to be made in that niche, just all the opportunities in that. So we're speaking the same language from a very specific social aspect of what you're talking about. Yep. And it's often because the financial aspect of what we're talking about. Very few companies have a social dollar only to spend. Here at Socially In, that's all we do. We're not a digital marketing agency, So a lot of times people come to us and they're like, I got a budget, but it's my digital marketing budget. So you guys are splitting that between all of these other things, and social's a piece of it. We're like, well, all we do is the social aspect of it. So for us to protect our dollars, we have to get into the ROI, the spend, all of those different things. And that's where we're also educating our clients on is, you said it way better than I'm saying it right now. And it's, how do we really focus those dollars and really maximize that return? And one of the ways to do it is, why are we continuously talking to all of these people when we know exactly who the individuals we should be speaking to?
Yeah. There's there's no difference between sand and a diamond, right? One is just highly compressed, right? It's the same volume compressed. And so I want more diamonds, right? And I know that sounds cliche, but it's the same thing. It's like, do I want a bucket full of sand, or do I want to compress that down into a diamond and focus on the diamond, which is smaller and more valuable? Right.
And that's where the research that we've been talking about comes in. You say, I serve mothers. Okay, great. I don't know the number, but I can tell you there's tens of millions of mothers in the United States. What does that actually mean? And this is where getting that, whether it's customer data, whether it's audience prospecting data, whether it's all of these different things, understanding who is that ideal mother, the pain point, the interest, the all of those other aspects of outside of just their motherhood. Data is going to help us find and really hone into that. It's not that it's a bad thing that that it's mothers, but what we know is that there's all kinds of mothers out there.
Yeah. Well,
what does that mean?
100%. Well, to Andrew's point and to your point, Lorenzo, y'all made a lot of good, I would say, high level notes I hope people are taking when it comes to the layering factor. So going back to Andrew's point about, not ad wasting. So I think marketers honestly became lazy with the social platforms, with the algorithms, with what it allowed marketers to do. Marketers became lazy. Brands became lazy. They push all of their customers into these 1, 2, 3, 4 buckets, not understanding that there's probably 100 buckets that these customers fall within. And people don't realize, I said spam earlier, but I said it very specifically because people think of spam as something that's just crap, that is virus related, that can hack your computer. Spam is honestly can be a very creative, curated ad, But if you are the person who's seeing it that has no intent on taking an action behind it, that is spam to me. That is spam to you, and you have no reason that you want to see that. Being able to take all of this data, being able to leverage AI to understand it, being able to then speak to those 100 buckets that you are now able to layer, the mothers that are also mothers of young children. There's maybe teenage mothers. There's maybe, older midwife mothers. There's, all these different segments, and being able to talk to them that your product actually speaks to a pain or to a purpose. Like I said, marketers got lazy, and I think I'm very excited about what Andrew was talking about it being able to understand all of that and then feed what they're actually looking for by you understanding that insight. And it's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait. And all the big media companies have been trying to figure out how do they stop ad waste, because the social platforms are obviously wanting to use your dollar to maximize. But on top of that, the way they maximize it is trying to show it to the most people possible.
Well, it's funny you say that. As you know, as one of the things I do for our role is I try to identify partnerships, and we're always thinking about just different tech, and we let people pitch us in some different things. And I've actually taken a couple meetings as of late where some AI companies that are propping up that are doing mass testing before you start a campaign. So now what used to happen and cost tens of thousands of dollars. So theoretically, when you would start this, if you were branding, you knew it was mothers, but you didn't know what kind of mothers. That's an expensive learning process right there, because then we got to say, okay, first off, let's figure out all the different type of mothers that we got out there. Okay, great. Let's figure out all the different type of talking points and all the different type of things that we want to say for them. When you truly think about building that out, if you were talking about in an ideal situation, budget is endless. Not only the amount of time to set that up, but then the time to actually test it, run the campaigns, get the data that you can say, okay, now what does this data do, and then get to it. There's some companies propping up that are very interesting that's now able to take, because there's just so much data out there, they can run these and use AI to run these tests before you actually have to put the spin. So before I got to run and spend $10,000, I'm 20K down just to learn, just to test, not even gotten the ROI. We're not even talking about conversions. I'm just trying to figure out what's connecting with my audience. Now they're even streamlining that part, and technology's even doing that. Now they can run all of those tests before and then tell you, this is the creative, this is the audience, this is the ad copy, this is the messaging, this is the funnel, this is what data is saying that you should ideally start with. We've already run the test. We've run hundreds of thousands of tests for you already. So it's been pretty interesting listening to how, again, like we've been talking about AI and things, the data aspect of what we're talking, the audience targeting and design is just really coming full circle.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the partnership is going to be like, there's no way, I don't have the processing power and the human power at our agency to solve all of these problems. And so, I think that, when you look at all of the tech stacks that we use on a daily basis, right? Like whether you guys are using, I mean, obviously you're in platform a lot with Meta, I'm sure, and everything else. And, the lazy way has been just to pull Meta marketplace segments and go with it. With some modeling, maybe, back of napkin modeling. And so, I think that there is, and I think that kind of, no one's intending to be lazy. First of all, I think everyone is just so fucking exhausted after the pandemic and and politics and culture things and about to break out in World War III. I mean, these are not little things that we're talking about. You know,
I agree.
Or thinking about or have anxiety about. But at the same time, we all have to figure out how to feed each other and feed ourselves, take care of our kids and work and whatever. It's almost like a lot of this technology is coming around at the right time, but at the same time under duress. And everything goes in cycles, right? Everything goes in cycles. I mean, if you were living in the United States in 1945, I mean, you might be thinking that the world was clearly ending. You know what I mean? And what happened? Everyone had babies because things turned around. You know what I mean? And the baby boomers came out, right? So these things do cycle. I think our cycles are shorter because of technology, but then maybe they become more predictable. I mean, maybe AI helps solve the human problem by saying it just game theories out what's happening in Israel and Palestine. I mean, to be quite honest, it game theories out all these different scenarios and says it appears to me it appears to me the grand wizard AI that this seems to be the best. What these are 3 paths forward, logically speaking. And I don't know.
I'll say 2 things on that, and kind of, and I know we're starting to get to the end, but 2 thoughts on that. First, I would be extremely interested to hear the guys over at the Copenhagen Institute for Futuristic Studies tell us how they're using AI with all of their trends research and all of those different things. Because when we were in Spain or wherever we were at, and we listened to that talk, and we went through how they predicted, for example, the rise of a person like Trump in America and different things like that. Like, that was just very interesting. And they were like, we figured that out in advance because of how politics was trending all over the world and different things. Based upon that analysis, we knew that it was likely that something like this was going to be able to happen in American politics. I'd be extremely interested, y'all, to just kind of hear how they're starting to use and how they're starting to integrate these things to predict that different type of stuff. I just think that I think that it'd be quite I just think that it'd be quite fascinating. Quite fascinating, to be honest with you.
So all we have to do is trust that the government has great AI.
Did you say trust the government? I did say that. I'm making sure everybody heard that clearly.
Yeah. And then quickly qualify that with a face slap. So oh, gentlemen, this has been great.
This was good stuff, man. We really appreciate you taking out the time. This was awesome. Our first guest, so you'll be able to go down in history, Andrew. But again, man,
we'll have a trivia question about Andrew one day.
We'd love to have you back on in the future, man. This is awesome. We know that you just love this space. For everybody, like we said, Andrew is with Cicerone out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Definitely check out their agency, y'all. If you can't tell by the knowledge he was just dropping today, he is really into this space. They are really innovative. They are really forward thinking. Check out what they're doing up there, guys. They're doing some awesome things and stuff like that. And again, Andrew, we can't thank you enough for taking some time with us this morning. And Kaushal, once again, another good session with you, brother.
It was a good one. We really appreciate Andrew coming out. Andrew is more than just an agency expert, an industry revolutionary. He is our friend. He is a good human being. He wants to do right by humans and people. And if any takeaway outside of all of the AI jazz that came out of this conversation today is, if you can treat people better, there's probably a full circle thing that your life ends up better as well. So thank you, Andrew, for being a representation of that. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us, speak to all of our audience. And until next time.
Well, thank you for the very kind words and the invitation. You guys, right back at you. I love both of you guys so much, and we'll see you hopefully this spring. I don't even know where we'll be this spring, but I'll see you this spring.
It's going to be someplace fun. Together. We know that. Whatever it is, it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time.
Tahoe.
It is Tahoe. Yes, it will be Tahoe. It will be Tahoe.
All right.
We'll look forward to that.
Gentlemen, take it easy, fellas, y'all.
See you later.
Yep, wrapping up Seriously Social, episode 19, y'all. Till next time.
Signing out.